Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me. My name is Asanda Notshe from Mazi. I'm the Chief Investment Officer. It's ironic that we're talking about infrastructure and we're battling with technological infrastructure. We do apologize sincerely for the delay, but not wasting any more time. We've got guests that have joined us here from Infrastructure South Africa. With infrastructure being such an important and a pivotal aspect of the country and its ability to potentially drive growth and development, we thought that it's important to bring these experts and these guests to the webinar. And thank you very much for joining and welcome to everyone. Mameetse and Alvino, perhaps I can just ask you to maybe just quickly do an introduction, and maybe we can just jump straight into it. And perhaps you could start by just giving us a quick overview of the work that Infrastructure South Africa does, and then we'll take it from there. To our guests joining the webinar, please do post questions if there's any, and we'll try and address those through the course of the discussion. Thank you. Maybe can I hand over to you, Mameetse, to introduce quickly? Thank you.
I was just starting by apologizing to the team on the call for joining the meeting a bit late. In fact, from 10 minutes before the time, we've been trying to log in, but we're not successful until now. So our sincere apology for that. Chair, I am actually booked off sick. I'm not so well today, but there's such an important event, an important platform. I simply could not be able to come through. So I'll just deal with the first introductory slides, and then I'll let Alvino take over. It's just my chest is not very, I'm not feeling too good. Alvino, maybe you want to load the first few slides. I'm in the slide deck, and then I will speak to the first three or so, and then we can proceed. So we've been guided, Asanda, by the notes that were given to us by Mazi to take through the meeting through this presentation. I think it builds on the bilateral we had at our offices about a few weeks ago, where we really committed ourselves to engaging with you and the broader community in your sector to essentially talk about Infrastructure South Africa and its mandate, the sort of programs that we deal with, our priorities, and most importantly, looking at the project pipeline, as it were. And in today's meeting as well, we'll also share with you updates on the project pipeline of the infrastructure fund. So if we go to the next slide. This is the picture that we are seeking to address. So there is a national development plan. It set the target of 30% of GDP to be the gross fixed capital formation. So infrastructure investment must constitute 30% of GDP. At this present moment, we're sitting just under 15%. So that's the latest figures that we have. So we are nowhere near the target that was set back in 2012 already, to say that by 2030, this is where South Africa needs to be at. So what it means is that in reality, or in real terms, it means that we need to be adding something of the region, in the region of 120 billion rand in the next 7 years to be able to come anywhere close to reaching that target that was set in 2012 as mentioned. And so in terms of this NDP target, we are not there yet as yet. And one of the indicators as well is that there is very much low participation of a private sector in the project, in the capital projects that government in particular is implementing or is driving. And so if you look at the total project pipeline, less than 2% of that constitute like PPPs or blended finance projects, etc. And so we have a very ambitious program, and the target that's been set, and which we need to be driving as Infrastructure South Africa. And our own computation, we worked with PwC I think 2 years ago, where we were able to look at the overall project pipeline. And what was clear is that we needed to bring to market every year almost 20 mega projects, so the size of Bochubai Port Development or Lesotho Highland water scheme, like this 10 billion rand sort of projects and above in terms of value. We need to be bringing those into the market on an annual basis, anything between 16 and 20 of those. And we are not yet at that stage where we can say confidently that this is the project pipeline, and these are the projects that will be coming through on an annual basis. So we are really starting from the baseline that's very low on the side of Infrastructure South Africa. So in terms of the next slide, we then show you that in order to get infrastructure right, Infrastructure South Africa has been established essentially to influence infrastructure strategy and planning for the country. And so we have the National Infrastructure Plan 2050 that really sets the vision for the type of infrastructure we require by that time to ensure that South Africa stays to be globally competitive. We've got efficient ports that are running. We've got efficient freight and logistics networks. We've got bulk water schemes that are working, etc. And so we have put that together, which has been approved by Cabinet, and that's what we work around in terms of prioritizing the kind of infrastructure projects that comes through the window of ISA, and that the type of prioritization that we get to apply. There's a methodology that we apply to identify and prioritize these infrastructure projects. You can imagine that there's quite a long list of these projects that are coming through ISA's window. So we need to be able to identify what these projects look like and prioritize these and deploy resources, working with the project sponsor, of course, to progress these projects and graduate them to a point where they get to financial close and they can go into the market. What we also address is sort of the policy, regulatory, and legislative issues. Anything that we identify as impediments to infrastructure investment, we address that. We work with the regulatory institutions, regulatory bodies. We work with the mandate departments, the kind of the policy givers. We work with, interacting with your Operation Vulindlela's National Treasury and others in addressing some of these policy and regulatory impediments. We've been successful in others. In other areas, it's a bit slow, but we believe that we'll be able to gain ground over the next coming months in addressing some of these ones. Again, we're also mandated to close the infrastructure investment gap and build that private sector confidence in the capacity and capability of government to deliver bankable public infrastructure projects and programs. And so that's the reason why we now have dedicated budget from the National Treasury. It's brand new allocation to Infrastructure South Africa. It's 600 million over MTEF period to really begin to prepare and package, put together these bankable infrastructure projects to build that comprehensive and reliable project pipeline. And so we'll be able to talk to you what those projects look like and the type of work we do in preparing and packaging these projects for funding and for financing, both by the National Treasury and other institutions, including yourselves that are interested in putting money behind projects that align with your philosophy, align with your own growth strategies, etc. And on the infrastructure funding gap perspective, we are also mandated to look at innovative funding models for public infrastructure. We do engage with National Treasury on an ongoing basis in relation to this. One of them that we've been successful in is we got National Treasury to amend the DORA, the Division of Revenue Act, 18 months ago, to allow provinces to pledge or to front load or to use pledging instruments to crowd in private sector financing for social infrastructure investment programs, so at the programmatic level to get that going. We also have partnerships. We've got the established platform of engagement with DFIs, your IDC, PIC, DBSA, as well as multilateral development banks in the form of World Bank, EIB, New Development Bank, and others. We meet with them periodically, just so they've got line of sight on the project pipeline, and they're also able to shape this project pipeline. They're also able to engage with us on some of the pertinent matters that they're able to surface around infrastructure development in the country. And our focus going forward, I think from the current financial year going forward, is that we really will be focusing a lot more on projects that can lend themselves as PPPs and projects that can be blended finance candidate projects, and projects that can demonstrate or have got the capacity to be delivered differently, both from a financing perspective, funding perspective, and also from a delivery perspective. When we engage the Minister of Finance, he was very clear that we must move away from projects that rely 100% from the fiscus for support, because it is shrinking, the budget is shrinking, and the economy is just not growing fast enough such that there is a sufficient reserves within the National Treasury envelope to support those strategic projects, even if they are strategic, they are economically important, or projects, they are strategic. However, if they're going to have to rely 100% from the fiscus, it's just the project that they will not be able to support 100%. So we are really intentional in shifting and pivoting the project pipeline to ensure that we work more with these projects that can attract private sector finance, as it were. And of course, from our technical services office, we work with the project sponsors, particularly municipalities, on the delivery side. Sometimes it's for infrastructure audits or infrastructure delivery support, the technical capacity that is required, like engineering capacity and any other type of support that they may require to implement those projects. We do have, we've built sufficient capacity in that regard to be able to support them in that way. In the next slide, this one is an important one, just to get a sense of, my apology, this is on the IDA. So we've also been asked to talk about, so where does ISA derive its power from a legislative perspective? It is in relation, it is the Infrastructure Development Act. That's what gives ISA, in its current form, the legal mandate to facilitate and coordinate public infrastructure development, to be able to engage with project sponsors, be it municipalities, state-owned enterprises, public entities, your water boards, etc., to coordinate this space. It will derive that mandate from the IDA. And really, we are seeking to, in terms of this act, to ensure that there is a level of improvement in the manner in which public infrastructure is managed and is rolled out throughout the life cycle phases. So in terms of reporting, we report directly to the President through the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission. So we sit with the President 3 times a year, taking through the infrastructure landscape, the project pipeline, some of the issues that the insights that we're drawing from some of the impediments that we are trying to address, where the regulatory bottlenecks are, areas that will require unblockings, etc. And then, but from a budget perspective, our budget comes from the Ministry of Public Works and Infrastructure for now. So we get 110 million. My apologies, a typo. There's 110 million for operations, and then it's 600 million that's ring-fenced. This is from the Treasury directly on project preparation. So Infrastructure South Africa itself is not a project owner. We don't own any project, and we don't perform any functions related to procurement, contracting of service providers. We do provide some support on the delivery of these projects where required. But ultimately, these are the functions that are performed by the accounting officers. And so from an ISA perspective, from a PFMA perspective, MFMA, these are the powers that reside with the Director General or HOD, etc. So we don't take those responsibilities over to us. And with the next slide, this is the heart of the mechanics of Infrastructure South Africa. So if we move from the left to the right, so we get projects from either national departments, provinces, municipalities, state-owned enterprises like PRASA, like SANRAL, TCTA on the water side, as well as private sector companies. In fact, ISA is the only program of government, entity of government that works directly with private sector companies and their projects because they require different types of support from ISA. So we onboard those type of projects. So we are that single point of entry for a catalytic or priority infrastructure projects. How we funnel them, how we look at them is that there's economic modeling exercises that we do perform, quite detailed work by the Center of Excellence within ISA. But just at the high level, at the macro level, we'll look at the National Infrastructure Plan, we'll look at the National Special Development Plan, we'll look at the National Development Plan 2030. From a sector perspective, whether this is a project that can be onboarded, it must be in the right sectors. The priority sectors being your energy, your network industries, energy, ICT, water and sanitation, freight transport, and then human settlements, of course, from a construction perspective. And these projects must be 1 billion rand and above in value for them to be onboarded in the ISA space. And thirdly, is that these projects are not funded. So there will not be projects that are funded because we need to prepare and package them in order for them to be bankable, such that they can be financed and they can be fundable from the National Treasury space. There is a methodology that we apply called the 5-case model to progress these projects from your conceptual stage to pre-feasibilities, feasibility stages, and so on. And there's different committees internally, as well as independent reviews on these projects as they progress from one stage to the other, to ensure that the process is transparent, is robust, and the information is validated on an ongoing basis. That's the only way in which we can bring we can raise the standards of project preparation in the country. So these various committees, there's ISA, there is Infrastructure Fund, there's the National Treasury, there is the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation in the presidency as well, so that it's not just ISA talking to itself, but there is this platforms and committees that are decision-making that bring others on board, so that everybody has got a line of sight that's critical for the work of preparing a project pipeline. It's only when these projects are prepared and packaged and that require funding. So the 3 funding pathways, if you look at them, whether these projects are commercially viable, These projects are blended finance sort of candidates, they are PPPs, or they are pure fiscus projects, or projects that require 100% funding from the fiscus. That whole environment is the National Treasury environment. So because of their mandate, both from the Constitution, PFMA, and other legal prescripts, that's the environment that Treasury then takes over. On our side, our work and our niche is to make sure that the projects are filtered through, they are funneled through a specific methodology. There's an economic modeling exercise that we apply to prioritize these projects, to make sure that we've got the right projects in the right spaces, aligned with the overall strategic objectives of government, and that they are progressed using internationally benchmarked methodology in bringing these projects to bankability space. But as soon as they require funding, that we hand over that work to National Treasury. We work with the likes of your DFIs, your MDBs, commercial banks, and others to get these projects now into the funding realm. So this is very important to understand, because I think one of the areas we've been asked to share with you is, so how does ISA work, and to what extent does it engage with the project sponsor? And how does the work that ISA does fit in with the National Treasury environment? And so this is the picture around the mechanics of how we work and we interface with the National Treasury and into the funding space. So the infrastructure fund, once these projects have been identified as blended finance candidate projects, the infrastructure fund will come in to apply their own methodology and so on the financial structuring of those projects, to make sure that there is a level of de-risking or fiscal injection to those projects, but then they raise the rest of the funding required for those projects in debt capital markets. And Alvino will take you through those processes, and as well as the project pipeline in terms of the next slides. Over to you, Alvino.
Yeah, perhaps thank you so much, Mameetse, and hope you feel better. I think just given the time that we've got, Alvino, I'd maybe ask that maybe we address maybe 2 or 3 areas. So one, I think, being as Mameetse said, just how the interaction as far as yourselves or infrastructure fund, how the interaction is with the public sector. And then we've got a question from Anthony Julies on just the impact. So maybe let me read it properly. So for impact, what indicators are used to measure long-term changes resulting from the Infrastructure Development Act? So I would imagine that's almost, sort of looking at the KPIs of the program, and how do we measure and look at what does success sort of look like? And then maybe a third one is just to, I think on your side of, the pipeline, I think you've got the slide here, just to give everyone an idea of the things that you're looking at. Thank you.
So should we deal with the question now, Asanda, or later?
We can start with the question, if that's okay.
So ordinarily we'll be looking at, thank you for that, there's a brilliant question. Ordinarily we'll be looking at GDP impact, of course, and I mean, we measure that through the gross fixed capital formation landscape. We look at the contribution of the pipeline to competitiveness of the economy. We look at job creation. We look also at fiscal risk. So the extent to which these projects, they shift the risk to the private sector, they shift, there is less reliance on the fiscus for funding. That for us will be some of the elements that we will look at as a measure of success in relation to this project pipeline. Thanks, Chair.
Cool, thank you very much. Alvino, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just to introduce myself, I'm Alvino Windschutt-Prins. I'm responsible for the infrastructure pipeline at ISA. Because of timelines, I'm just going to be very quick in terms of what we want to present. I mean, a lot has been touched on now on the blended finance component, especially from an infrastructure fund perspective, and the infrastructure fund being part of the tripartite of ESA, the agreement that we signed between ourselves, National Treasury, and then the infrastructure fund, which is hosted by the Development Bank of Southern Africa. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I mean, my acting head has already informed you in terms of that infrastructure investment gap that we need to fill and that we need to look into and identify those key projects for implementation, and also then look at alternative mechanisms for funding that can leverage private sector finance. And this is where the infrastructure fund actually plays a very key role in bringing those role players into the market, into public sector projects specifically, and to assist us in unlocking these projects. This is just the model that is being shown here in terms of how we try to propel the sustainable development agenda, focusing a lot on the blended finance mechanisms and fundamentals of that. So in terms of the infrastructure fund, which is a blended finance approach that is being followed, the value proposition in essence include that providing that blended finance solutions and co-financing mechanisms and improving commercial viability that is bringing in the private sector. In essence, what they're trying to do is to focus on, reaching that gap level at the moment. And the acting had mentioned earlier on, we have a lot of projects that focuses on in public sector that is not bankable. And we need to take that unbankable projects to a more fully credit-worthy type of program that can be delivered on as well. And hence, that is where the commercial side is coming in, finance coming in, the blended finance comes in, and also the use of grant subsidies as well. I don't have to take you through this whole approach that is being that you see here in front of you, but this is in essence the type of blended finance model that is being used in the delivery of the programs and projects that we focus on, especially through the infrastructure fund that we work with. In terms of the project pipeline, and if I only focus on the blended finance component, I mean, before I go into it, there's something that you see that is called the BFI. So the budget facility for infrastructure is from National Treasury, and it's a budget reform initiative established to support priority infrastructure projects through a more rigorous project planning process, appraisal and selection process as well. So the intention here is to support enhanced project outcomes, and improve value for money to government. So the BFI process requires projects to have sustainable financial arrangements and the effective development and execution capacity as well. And this is where the IF, or the infrastructure fund, is coming into play as well. So what happens is the projects come in through the pipeline in ESA. Currently, we were looking at around 134 projects at last count in the ESA pipeline of quality projects that we've assessed through our process, which was standing at an estimate of about 675 billion. Just looking at those projects that were blended potential projects that the IF started to look into were about 29 only of those projects. So that is only those projects that they look at from a blended finance project perspective. There's other projects that we're looking at in terms of looking at alternative funding models that we can use, for example, through National Treasury as well. We look at PPP models that can be used for other projects as well. This was specifically linked to the blended finance models that were there, with that 29 projects. Active consideration, under active considerations, was about 185 billion, and currently, as submitted through to the BFI, the window that just closed now in May, was about 9 projects that they submitted to unlock that funds from National Treasury of about 134 billion rand. These projects you can see is listed there, as well, the 9 projects. And the BFI grants then, in essence, will link up to about 22 billion rand that will filter into the whole program or into the projects. Whereas from the commercial sector that is to be unlocked is about 26 billion rand through the process. So the IF will then include about 8.8 billion rand from their own side over their own pocket to close these projects. So I'm going to look at some of these projects in the slides quickly, but this is just an overall view in terms of what the project pipeline is looking like from a blended finance perspective, and where even institutional investors can come on board and see how they can assist on these projects as well. And the IF, the infrastructure fund, will open this to the market as they go out once they have that sign off from National Treasury on these projects as well. So just to give you a quick overview of some of the projects, and I'm not going to go into all of them in detail because of time. So we have the one project here, which is a water project from the Lepelle Northern Water Board. It's proposed upgrades to reduce water service backlogs and meet the current project commercial and social water needs. You can see the project cost about 4.6 billion. With an approved amount, and that approved amount already from the BFI or from National Treasury is about 1.4 billion rand. So the rest of the funds is going to be or is being unlocked through the commercial sector or private sector. You can see that they're planning financial close already at December 2024 this year. And already the funding of the RFP or the term sheet is to be signed by August 24 already. This year. So that is the timeline that I've given specifically for the upgrade of this specific project. Another one is the Maratele Northern Clip for bulk water supply. And I have to add here that the sectors in essence overall includes transport, water, energy, digital, human settlements, your SEZs and IDZs, and some of the agro-processing, especially those infrastructure-related projects, are also included among the sectors. I'm just highlighting a few. A number of the projects currently in the pipeline, and obviously because of the need itself, is also the water sector that is coming through a lot, but also human settlements projects that's coming into play. And hence you have another one here, which is the Maratele Northern Clip for bulk water supply projects in the northwest. Again, the spot here is Magalies Water project cost about 5.2 billion. Approved funding already from National Treasury is 1.9 billion. That is coming into the works in terms of part of the negotiations. And then approval of the borrowing limit for funding is now extended towards October 2024. So you can see we're tracking in terms of the process as well. And the reason we're showing you, just to be transparent, is there is some delay, but we are showing you the new deadlines that has been set there for this one as well. It says June 25, but it's supposed to be January 25. Apologies for that one day. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alvino and
Mameetse. Maybe if I can get over to Mameetse, maybe just to close this off, because I think that the last one, just in terms of your time, we also have the projects that's in preparation. Currently, there's about 180 billion rand worth of projects. And one of the big projects that came through is the Ukuvuselela project that we're working on now. This is a project from Eastern Cape, Gauteng to Eastern Cape, is the automotive one, and it is in play a lot in the market at the moment. And we hope to close this by next year because of unlocking the forward investment of 16 billion rand that's coming through as well. Let me hand over to Mameetse if you want to close some marks here. Mameetse.
Thanks, Chair. I think we'll leave it here. We'll share the presentation with your team as well. Thanks.
Okay, no, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think, yeah, we're out of time. Maybe we can label this part one. I think there's a lot to unpack from the discussion, and perhaps leaves us a lot to discuss in a future session. So we're really grateful for the time, Mameetse and Alvino, and really commend you for the work that you're doing. I think there's a lot of detail here and insight, and I think we've got a couple of questions which we haven't been able to get to, but perhaps we'll include those in the discussion that's to come. So I think we can commit ourselves to saying perhaps there's a second part to this that we definitely need to have and really get closer to the detail in addition to what you've given us today. So thank you, everyone. Apologies again for the very late start, but I think we've gained a lot and learned a lot today. Have a good day. Thank you. Cheers.